Hello everyone, I am Madhu Chetan. In this class, let's see what are all the limitations of ratio analysis. In Unit 3, ratio analysis, the subject is management accounting, 6th semester of BBA and BCom. So the limitations of ratio analysis are like this. The ratio analysis is one of the most powerful tools of financial management and management accounting. Though ratios are simple to calculate and easy to understand, they suffer from various serious limitations. So, those limitations are: the first one, the limited use of a single ratio, lack of adequate standards, inherent limitations of accounting, change of accounting procedures, window dressing, personal bias, incomparable, it's actually uncomparable, then absolute figures distortive, price level changes, and no substitute for ratios, no substitute. Now let's see one by one what are all these things. The first one, limited use of single ratio. Which one? Limited use of a single ratio. A single ratio usually does not convey much of a sense. It does not convey much of a sense. To make a better interpretation, a number of ratios have to be calculated. So to make the better interpretation, more number of ratios have to be calculated, which is likely to confuse the analyst than help him in making any meaningful conclusions. Before making any conclusions, it may confuse the analyst. Now moving to the second one. Which one? The lack of adequate standards. So the lack of adequate standards are, there are no well accepted standards or rule of thumb for all ratios which can be accepted as norms. There is no universally accepted rules for accepting the ratios. There is no norms. So it renders interpretation of the ratios difficult. There are no well accepted standards or rules of thumb for all ratios which can be accepted as norms. It renders what interpretation of the ratios difficult. Now moving to the next one. Inherent limitations of accounting. So like financial statements, ratios also suffer from the inherent weakness of accounting records, such as their historical nature. Ratios of past are not necessarily true indicators of the what? Necessarily true indicators of the future. So like financial statements, ratios also suffer from the same inherent weakness of accounting records, such as historical in nature. They're historical in nature. Ratios of the past are not necessarily true indicators. They don't indicate properly of the future. Now moving to the change of accounting procedure. The change in accounting procedure by a firm often makes ratio analysis misleading. How, say for example, a change in the valuation of methods of inventories. If the company makes any changes in valuation of inventories from FIFO to LIFO, increases the cost of sales and reduces considerably the value of closing stocks. If the company changes any methods in the organization, example is taken is method of inventories. If the company changes from FIFO, first in first out, to LIFO, last in first out, it increases the cost of sales and reduces considerably the value of closing stocks, which makes stock turnover ratio to be lucrative and an unfavorable gross profit ratio. So it may make the gross profit ratio unfavorable. Now moving to the next points. Window dressing. Window dressing. Financial statements can easily be window dressed to present a better picture of its financial and profitability position to outsiders. Sometimes company window dress their financial statements to make financial statement attractive, means in to make the investors or the outsiders, to impress them with their financial transactions, with their profitability, sales revenue, like this, to present a better picture of its financial and profitability. Sometimes the company, what they do, they window dress the financial statements, so to show the better position of the organization, they may manipulate the figures. So one has to be very careful in making a decision from ratios calculated from such financial statements, the financials which are window dressed. But it may be very difficult for an outsider to know about the window dressing made by a firm. So if the figures are altered, it will be difficult for the outsiders to know. It will be difficult for the outsiders to understand. So based on this window dressed financial statements, if any conclusion is drawn, it used to be false. Then next, personal bias. Moving to the next point, next limitation of ratio analysis is personal bias. So ratios are only means of financial analysis and not an end in itself. So it is what the ratio does. The ratio analyzes the financial statements, but this is not an end. Ratios have to be interpreted, and different people may interpret the same ratio in different ways. So different people interpret the same ratios in different ways. So this leads to the personal bias of the company, and the one of the important limitations of ratio analysis. And the next one is uncomparable. So not only industries differ in their nature, but also the firms of the similar business widely. Not only industries differ in their nature, but also the firms of the similar business widely differ in their size and accounting procedures also. So when there are different parameters, when the firms are differ in different parameters like the size, the procedure, in their nature, so it makes comparison of ratios difficult and misleading. So it's difficult for the investors or outsiders to compare with the other firms, other industries, which are differ in their nature, in their size, and in their procedures, accounting procedures. So it makes comparison of ratios difficult and misleading, and moreover, comparisons are made difficult due to differences in definitions of financial terms used in the ratio analysis. So comparisons are made difficult due to differences in definitions of various financial terms used in the ratio analysis. Now moving to the next one, absolute figures distortive. So ratios devoid of absolute figures may prove distortive, as ratio analysis is primarily a quantitative analysis and not a qualitative analysis. Since the analysis is not a qualitative analysis, since it is a quantitative analysis, the ratio analysis may prove, the figures may prove distortive. Next, price level changes. The price level changes while making ratio analysis, no consideration is made to the change in price levels, and this makes the interpretation of ratios invalid. So at the time of ratio analysis, analyzing the financial statements under ratio analysis techniques, the price level changes took place is not considered. So that's why the interpretation of ratios may become invalid. Now moving to the last one, the ratio no substitutes. Ratio analysis is merely a tool of financial statements. Hence, the ratios become useless if separated from the statements from which they are computed. The ratio analysis are most one of the important tool of financial statements. If the ratio becomes the ratio becomes useless if separated from the statements from which they are computed. They are the statements, if they are computed and it is separated, then it will become useless. So that's why there is ratios no substitutes. With this I end this session. Thank you very much.